All right, my name is Adam Rashid. I am a front-end developer. I was based here in Orange County. I just moved down to San Diego to work for a e-commerce company. In this talk, I'm going to show you how to use WordPress's new REST API and use WordPress as a headless CMS. To preface, who here develops custom themes or knows how to? Cool. Who's learning? Raise your hand. There you go. And who wants to learn? Awesome. Cool. Now, WordPress, Drupal, and all these kind of CMSs have been around since like Web 2.0 was a thing about like 10-ish years ago. So WordPress has been around for a while. And more recently, a lot of other development tools have been out. A lot of JavaScript heavy things like React have been out as well. And that's kind of led WordPress fall by the wayside in the development world. But the thing is, a lot of people use WordPress and a lot of developers' clients use WordPress. And retraining everyone to use another CMS or custom CMSs is a big, big challenge. And I think that's part of the reason why the team at Automatic, the guys that created WordPress, have released, I believe at the end of last year or 2016, a REST API. Now, before we get into that, let's just, you know me, right? Before we get into REST APIs and stuff, let's talk about what a headless CMS is. It's also called a decoupled CMS. It kind of lets you break the kind of standard limits of your CMS by separating the presentation model, is like how you code a theme, through the data layer, like the actual things that are being output. Like when I walked in, Brandon was talking about image tags and how you can output alt tags and title tags through the CMS. But then you still would have to create some PHP code to output that onto the HTML that people see on their browsers. That's what a headless CMS does, is it decouples the actual data from how you would code it up. And a way to do that is through a REST API. A REST API is kind of the way it presents you that data. REST APIs usually output a file called a JSON file, which is a JavaScript file. And this is kind of how it works. If you're using a headless CMS, you have your kind of server and database and hosting wherever you're hosted. Then you have your CMS, which would be WordPress for you guys, which handles that kind of back-end database stuff. It like talks to that database and lets you make adjustments to that database, whether it's modifying things or viewing them or so forth. And then this is where headless kicks in, is instead of going straight to the browser, it spits out a kind of middleman layer of data. Cool thing with that is you can not only just make websites, you can use that for apps, and you can use that for a lot of things that use web technology. You can even do Internet of Things and make little Amazon easy buttons that ping a server whenever you press it. And that's all done through that kind of middle layer called the JSON file. So why headless? First and foremost, tech stacks are changing, the way people code is changing, and WordPress hasn't changed all that much outside of like Gutenberg. And this lets you kind of future-proof that side by completely separating the CMS you and your clients love with what people see and interact with on the front end. So this would let you completely redo your site without touching WordPress. It gives you full control of the front end, like I mentioned, and who here has coded in PHP outside of WordPress sites? Cool. So you guys know that developing for WordPress is kind of like WordPress flavored PHP, not really vanilla PHP. So this lets you get away from that as well. You can kind of code PHP using best practices, or even create a React site like I'm going to show you real quick, and use that data from WordPress. And it lets you create really interactive things. It lets you use things like React or Angular or Vue to make web apps, which are things that let you change stuff around on the site, create accounts, that kind of thing. Like Facebook is a web app, and they actually created React. Twitter is a web app, and you'll notice that a lot of things that you do on those sites, you can do them without the page reloading, which is really cool. And then really cool thing is you can import that data into another CMS. I'm using Shopify at work these days, and it's great for e-commerce, but the blog just falls apart. So we're actually thinking of doing something where we can create a WordPress blog and output that JSON data into the CMS shop or the Shopify shop. And I think that'd be really cool to experiment with. So I'm going to kind of show you how to get started and talk a little bit about my personal site that I'm redoing in React. Now, local development for WordPress, there's a couple of things I like. Scotchbox, which is a Vagrant setup. It's really quick and easy to spin up. And if you partner that with WP Distillery, you can spin up a WordPress local instance pretty quickly. Lately, it was giving me a little bit of trouble, so I just used Local by Flywheel, which is really, really good and really easy to use and has amazing user interface. It's very simple. And for local development, this is just for my case, I'm using React. You can use a Create React app, or in my case, I used a framework called Gatsby. It has a lot of things built in that allow you to create like multiple pages in a single page web app, which is really cool. And Gatsby is kind of like how Bootstrap is for CSS. So it kind of sits on top of React. This is a really cool part. Is if you're setting up WordPress to use as a headless CMS, you don't really need to use themes. Well, technically you do, but you can use like a blank one with the bare minimum. I think you need an index.php and then like a style.css and a functions file, and you're off to the races. In my instance, I just created this blank theme with a bunch of links that are useful to me. I will get into that in a second. And who's heard of advanced custom fields? Should be the whole room. Perfect. So advanced custom fields natively, you can't really see that in the REST API's JSON file, but there is a plugin called ACF to REST API. Really easy to download, and it helps you spit out that data in that JSON file. And something I did come across is I was using the iTheme security plugin, and by default that turns off the API. And you just have to go in and check that off. And I'm sure other security plugins do something similar. And that's really it for WordPress. So this is the documentation for the REST API. Oops. You just Google WP REST API and go to this handbook. And you guys can see, or do you want me to? Better? So biggest thing here is it shows you how to use it, and then this is the most useful part, is how to access certain things like posts, post revisions, categories, tags, etc. So let's go into the dashboard I have spun up backend. I created some custom post types, and then I have advanced custom fields with all this info that I'm going to set up. And I created a theme, which I'm actually going to just put on my GitHub profile so you guys can just swipe it. It's just this blank thing, and it links to these endpoints. So posts. This is what a JSON file looks like. I believe I have like 3 blog posts, and it's just this bunch of jargon. So the cool thing is you can copy this, and you can go to jslint.com. And paste it here. Actually, no, it's good job. JSON formatter. And this will kind of help you read this a little bit easier. See that there's usually multiple objects in a JSON file. So it has this big old one. So you'll see that each ID, this is a post ID, so If I go through the posts in WordPress, you'll see these in the pages as well. And you'll have things like titled, and this is where the title lives. So you have to go into a lot of different areas to dig that up. Let's close these. So that's what the JSON file kind of spits out. And you can do things like date created, different tags, categories, etc. Then you have post types and advanced custom fields. And you can get advanced custom fields through like the posts and pages as well. So let's go back. All right. Any questions so far? Yeah. Yeah, so what that does, it turns on like custom fields for the pages. So if you go into the pages endpoint, that's where you'll be able to find different fields as well. So let me I didn't mention endpoints too much. Let's go back a little. So the way you access the JSON files is whatever your domain is, you do -wp/JSON, and then it's version 2 of the API is out, so you do version 2, and then whatever you're looking for. Again, you can go to the handbook and go to like posts, scroll down, I'll show you the endpoint. Now you can also test this if you have terminal. You can simply like copy their example request and post this here, and it's going to spit something out in a sec. So it gives you this like JSON file right here, which is kind of cool. So yeah, right here the endpoint is /posts. So that's what I did in this little blank theme I made is this does pages, post types, advanced custom fields. Keep in mind, the advanced custom fields one is a little different because the version 3 of the plugin is out and it has its own API for this as well. So for this, you'll need to go to wp-json/acf/v3/posts. So you'll go back to slides. So yeah, that's how you access different parts of the site. So pulling in data, who has used Ajax in jQuery before? Cool. Who's used fetch or async await? Awesome, very cool. And who's used Axios? Very cool. All right, so for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, this is essentially a way to pull in, do like an HTTP request, which is talking to a server and getting something back without reloading the page. And you used to do that through jQuery when jQuery was big, through its Ajax method. Now, since native vanilla JavaScript has been on its rise, we have 7 or something like that now. Fetch is like a method in vanilla JavaScript. You don't need anything to like link to or download to use that. You can just use your browser, and you can pull in certain bits of data. And it takes a while to learn. So you can use a third-party library like Axios and use that to pull in data as well. And this is specific to React mounting. You want to make sure your modules load, and then you can get data in. All right, I'm going to show you a quick demo of my site. So I didn't get around to finishing the site at all, but I'm going to show you kind of how I'm working through this. This is a site I have that's live right now, and it's pure HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's built on Jekyll, which is a static site generator, and these are all static HTML pages. They're not talking to really any server. They're just like flat pages with stuff on them. So what I've been doing is I've been using Gatsby to create something similar in React. Notice that this kind of loads without reloading the page, which is really cool. Now this stuff is mostly static, but I have been working to make this more dynamic and talk to the WordPress site that I have up. Oh, this is VS Code, Visual Studio Code. It's by Microsoft and has a terminal built in, which is super handy if you have Windows. So this is kind of the folder structure. This is where my site I'm working on is. This is the public, which will be like going on a hosting site. So let's go to pages and index. Now I'm importing a bunch of things, and I have this data layer called API. Notice that I have this endpoint right here, which is my domain, and then /wp-json. And then I can like add on to that with whatever I want, like posts. And then this is just a variable to call this post wp, that's to pages, types, and so forth. So I'm calling that in right here. And let's say instead of woohoo, let's just do the posts. And let's go to a console. I did. It's right here. Oh yeah, you do. Actually, you're right. All right. Okay, there we go. So this is the line of code that I'm calling from WordPress. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So I have 3 posts on my WordPress right now. Just go back. These 3 posts. And we can see that it gives me an array of these 3 posts. So what we can do is go in here and find out where the title is. So we have title and then rendered. So we can do nope. Yeah, so I'm using the right here, the fetch method. Let me kind of walk you through this. Yeah, for sure. This is me kind of just debugging things. It's like 90% of my job. Uh-huh. Yeah. Data, let's call it posts. Or I'm going to set a variable, call it posts, equal to data. And then we're going to console log that out. Okay, we have the array again, but let me kind of walk you through what I'm doing. Can you guys see that? Sure. Good? Awesome. So fetch is essentially like calling something, like it's making an HTTP request. And then what it is there's a new thing in JavaScript called promises. It's essentially, okay, I have this, now what do I do with it kind of thing. So when you fetch something, JavaScript doesn't know what you're fetching. So when you fetch something, you have to like do a promise, call it, then you transpile into a JSON file, tell it that this is a JSON file, you're going to read it as a JSON file. And then you can do a function. This is an arrow function. and you can tell it to do something once that's happened. And if it doesn't work out, you can tell it to console log whatever didn't happen or why it didn't happen. So right now we're just console logging this into our browser. Right here, we have these three guys right here. Right here? I don't know how to zoom in on... Oh, okay, cool. All right, sweet. There we go. Okay. So I've just figured out why it wasn't working is because it's an array and just told it to spit it out. So I have to do a for all loop. So it indexes through the entire array. So I'm telling it for every item in the array, do this thing. So now we're getting, yay, no, we saw that. Yeah, this is something annoying in the WordPress API is everything's like 3 levels deep. So yeah, we have our titles right here. So what I'm gonna do next after this speech, because it would be a really long talk if I just worked on my site while I was presenting, is populate this stuff. So it shows me the latest case study post types, along with all their custom fields, along with the latest blog articles and linking to all that fun stuff. And these would be kind of the site options I have right here, the site options custom fields, all this stuff, and then the different talks I've given linked out here. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked. And since most of you guys are on the WordPress group, I'm gonna just be updating you guys on that. Slide's not over, or show's not over yet. So pushing the, hold on. We're editing this on the fly. All right. Lice, yeah, pushing the lice away. There you go. So since they're fully decoupled, you can fully decouple where they live online as well. WordPress, since it uses a database and it's pretty heavy for a site, I would recommend a SSD hosting solution like AWS or DigitalOcean, which I love to use. And then your site, since it's pretty, depending on what you do, you can use GitHub Pages if it's going to just be a static site, or you can use Netlify, which I'm using for my live site right now. And you can push static sites on it, and you can also push React sites on it, which can be static. And a really cool thing about Netlify is you can set up commands so you can connect it to your GitHub page, and it'll make changes whenever you push to GitHub. So that's the coolest thing, and it's free for small sites, I believe. And how you migrate it from local to live is first I would push your WordPress site live, and whatever domain you have for that site, that's what you would change your endpoints to on your React site, and then you push that live. And it's fairly easy and straightforward. And the cool thing is, since you're decoupling this, your site won't break with WordPress updates. So that's the best thing, yeah. And a cool thing is, since you guys were talking about images, is since you can do source sets natively in WordPress, it also spits out different sizes in the API. So you can use source sets here as well. So last couple of slides is, if you want to start experimenting with this, I would take a WordPress site you already have, just go to the endpoints, which I showcased a few slides above, and I'll make sure to publish these slides on the Facebook group. And just check out the JSON file, and then throw out like even you can go to CodePen and throw up a fetch method and request those things and start playing around with the data. It's really cool. And then if you want to dive into React or stuff, you can do that as well. And keep in mind, you don't have to go fully headless. You can go nearly headless. And yeah, I love Harry Potter quite a bit. So you can do things on your WordPress site that's built in PHP and add it this like extra layer of interaction. You can create like a load more button instead of pagination, which loads like the next 8 blog posts. So your users can stay on the same page. You can create a Twitter like count thing if you add a like functionality to like count, I guess, functionality to your blog posts. You can see how many likes your blog posts have in real time, just like Twitter likes. You can even do who reads Medium articles here. Yeah, you can do like the clap kind of thing, where you press clap, it doesn't reload the page, but adds that to the database. Yeah. Thank you. So these are the resources I mentioned. And the Mozilla developer docs are super useful. It helped me learn fetch, and I'm learning async await, which is kind of a better way to do fetch because you can kind of do more object-based things with it. And then you have GraphQL for WordPress. And that's it. Thanks for your time. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, yes.